Your hands are shaking right now, aren't they? Not from fear, from recognition, because somewhere deep in the marrow of your bones, you already know what I'm about to say. You've been running on a treadmill made of other people's expectations, sprinting until your lungs scream, and when you finally look down, you haven't moved an inch toward yourself. You've just worn grooves into someone else's path. There's this moment that happens in the dead of night when the world goes quiet and the performance ends. When you're alone with the brutal, unfiltered truth. That's when it hits you like a freight train made of regret. You've spent years building a life that looks good in everyone's eyes, except the ones staring back at you from the mirror. You've become a masterpiece of someone else's vision, a ghost wearing the costume of who they thought you should be. Marcus Aurelius didn't write his meditations for applause. He wrote them in the dirt and blood of battlefields, whispering to himself, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one, not what they think, not what shines on their feed, what burns true in the chambers of your own heart when nobody's watching." Imagine you're holding two photographs. One shows you at 80 years old, eyes hollow, chest tight, whispering to your younger self, "I can't believe you spent your entire existence worried about what they were doing, what they were thinking, what they were achieving, and you forgot to live." The other photograph? It doesn't exist yet. But it could show someone who broke free, who chose the violent, beautiful act of becoming themselves despite the noise. Every single person you've ever envied, every success you've scrolled past with that poison churning in your gut, every achievement that made you feel small, none of it has anything to do with you. Not one atom. You've been fighting wars in countries that aren't even on your map, bleeding for battles that were never yours to win. The Stoics understood something we've murdered in the age of comparison. Your only true opponent is the person you were yesterday. Not Karen from high school who just bought her third house. Not that influencer with the perfect abs and the perfect life and the perfect lie. Not your brother, your sister, your colleague, your neighbor. The only revolution that matters is the one happening inside your ribcage. You want to know what freedom tastes like? It tastes like the moment you realize their path was never meant to be walked by your feet. It tastes like finally planting roots in your own soil instead of trying to grow in their garden. It tastes like the savage grace of knowing you are not too much, not too little, not too late. You are exactly on time for your own becoming. I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. I reclaim my power from the audience I've been performing for. Before we dive into the depths of this transformation, I need you to do something. Smash that like button, like you're breaking the chains of comparison. Drop a comment and tell me the one person you've been comparing yourself to. We're releasing that weight today. Share this video with someone who's forgotten they're the main character of their own story. Subscribe to this channel because what we're building here is a revolution of self. And whatever you do, don't skip a single second of this video. Every word is a key, and you need all of them to unlock the prison you've been living in. Let's burn the old world down and build something real. Number 1. You've been worshipping at the altar of their approval and starving your own soul. The most dangerous addiction isn't to substances. It's to validation from people who don't even know your middle name. You've been injecting their opinions into your veins like medicine, thinking it'll cure the ache. But all it does is make you dependent on a drug that's killing you slowly, quietly, with a smile on its face. Think about the last time you posted something, created something, did something meaningful. Now be savagely honest with yourself. Were you doing it because it set your soul on fire? Or were you doing it because you needed them to see you, to validate you, to confirm that you matter. There's a difference between sharing your light and begging for permission to shine. One is generosity. The other is self-betrayal. Epictetus stood in chains, literal iron chains, and said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." He was a slave who became one of the most free men in human history because he understood something that you're still learning. The only chains that truly bind you are the ones you wrap around yourself when you hand other people the pen to your story. You've given them authorship over your worth, and they're writing you as a supporting character in your own life. Imagine your soul as a temple. Every day you wake up and walk past your own altar, dusty, neglected, cold, and you journey miles to lay offerings at someone else's shrine. You bring them your time, your energy, your attention, your peace. You kneel before the gods of their approval and pray for scraps of recognition. Meanwhile, your own temple crumbles. The incense never burns. The prayers go unspoken. You become a devoted worshipper of everyone except yourself. Here's the violence of it, the thing that should make your blood run cold. Those people you're obsessing over, they're not thinking about you, not the way you think about them. While you're lying awake at 3 in the morning, dissecting their every move, calculating the mathematics of their success, drowning in the acid of comparison, they're sleeping peacefully. They're living. They're focused on their own journey. You're a background thought at best, and more likely, you're not a thought at all. That's not cruelty, that's liberation. Because if they're not thinking about you, why are you sacrificing your mental real estate to them? Why are you giving away penthouses in your mind to people who don't even know the address? You've been performing for an audience that isn't watching, seeking approval from judges who already left the building, trying to win a competition that exists only in the torture chamber of your imagination. And the sickest part, you're so good at it now, you've perfected the art of self-abandonment. You can scroll through someone's perfect life and feel your own shrink in real time. You can watch their win and experience it as your loss. You've turned their light into your darkness, and you wonder why you can't find your way. Number 2. The mirror you're looking into is showing you everyone's reflection except your own. You wake up every morning and the first thing you do is reach for your phone. Not to check on yourself, but to check on them. To see who's winning while you're still in bed. To count the ways you're falling behind before your feet even touch the floor. You've turned your mornings into murder scenes where you assassinate your own potential before the day even begins. Here's what's happening in that moment. You're taking the most sacred hour of your existence, the blank canvas of a new day, and you're immediately painting it with someone else's colors. You're writing someone else's story in the margins of your own life. You're choosing, consciously or not, to be a character in their narrative instead of the author of yours. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the known world, wrote alone in his tent. Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking. He had armies, empires, gold that could buy nations, and yet he knew the secret that you keep forgetting. The kingdom you're searching for in their lives is buried in the unexplored territories of your own soul. Think about a river for a moment. A real river, cutting through stone, carving canyons, moving with purpose. Does the river stop flowing to watch another river? Does it compare its current to the stream next door? Does it apologize for not being an ocean? No, it flows. It becomes fully, unapologetically itself. It transforms the landscape simply by being true to its nature. But you've dammed yourself up. You've stopped your own flow to become a stagnant pool of comparison. You're standing still, looking sideways, wondering why you're not moving forward. You're so busy studying their current that you've forgotten you have your own. You're so obsessed with their destination that you've abandoned your own journey. Every minute you spend analyzing their path is a minute you're not walking yours. Every second you dedicate to understanding their strategy is a second you're not building your own. Every heartbeat you waste wishing you were them is a heartbeat that could have been spent becoming more of you. This isn't motivation. This is mathematics. This is the cold, hard reality of time. It doesn't pause for your comparison. It doesn't wait for you to finish stalking their success. It just bleeds out second by second, and you can't get it back. Here's the part that's going to sting. The reason you're so focused on them isn't because they're so special. It's because you're terrified of facing yourself. It's easier to scroll through their highlight reel than to sit in the uncomfortable silence of your own untapped potential. It's safer to obsess over their journey than to start your own. Because starting means you might fail. Starting means you might discover you're not who you thought you were. Starting means getting vulnerable with the most terrifying person you'll ever meet, the real you. So you hide. You hide behind their success. You hide behind the excuse that you're just curious or staying inspired. But inspiration doesn't make you feel like garbage. Inspiration lifts what you're feeling. That heaviness, that inadequacy, that constant drumbeat of not enough. That's not inspiration. That's self-destruction with a filter on it. The Stoics had a practice called the view from above, imagining yourself from a cosmic perspective, seeing how small and brief your life is in the vastness of time and space. But you've twisted it. You're viewing your life from their perspective, making yourself small on purpose, shrinking your own existence to fit into the shadow of their achievements. Number 3. Your energy is currency, and you've been bankrupt investing in someone else's dream. Let me tell you something that's going to crack your chest open. Every single human being on this planet gets the same 24 hours, the same 1,440 minutes, the same 86,400 seconds. No exceptions, no extensions, no refunds. That billionaire you envy, same hours. That influencer you stalk, same minutes. That person who seems to have it all figured out, same seconds. The difference isn't in the time, it's in the investment. And you've been pouring your life force into someone else's portfolio while your own account sits at zero. Seneca, facing his own death, said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." He was talking directly to you, across 2,000 years, screaming from the ancient world. Stop throwing away your existence on things that don't build you. Every moment you spend consumed by their life is a moment you're embezzling from your own. Think of your energy as water, pure, finite, irreplaceable water. You have one jug, and it needs to last you your entire life. Now imagine every day you wake up, and instead of watering your own garden, your dreams, your growth, your peace, you're walking to your neighbor's yard and dumping it on their lawn. You're hydrating their roses, strengthening their roots, making their garden lush and beautiful. Then you come home to your own plot of earth, and you wonder why everything's dying. You wonder why nothing blooms. You wonder why your life feels like a desert. It's not a mystery. You're drought by choice. You're famine by focus. You've been feeding everyone's future except your own. Here's what happens on a cellular level when you focus on others instead of yourself. Your brain literally rewires. It creates neural pathways that say, "My worth is external." It builds highways of thought that lead away from you and toward them. It constructs an entire architecture of identity that depends on comparison, that survives on inadequacy, that breathes only when measuring yourself against someone else's ruler. You become addicted to it. You get a hit of cortisol every time you see their success. That stress hormone floods your system, and perversely, you start to crave it. You seek out the very thing that's poisoning you. You scroll, you search, you stalk, and with each click, you're injecting yourself with the venom of comparison. And like any addict, you tell yourself you can stop any time. But can you? Can you go 1 week without checking on them? Can you go 1 day without measuring your progress against theirs? Can you go 1 hour without wondering where you'd be if you had their luck, their looks, their opportunities, their life? The brutal truth is this: while you've been busy being their biggest fan, you've become your own worst enemy. While you've been cheering for their wins, you've been sabotaging your own. While you've been investing emotional capital in their journey, your own dreams have been starving, gasping, begging for even a fraction of that attention. What if you took all that energy, all that research, all that analysis, all that emotional bandwidth you've been spending on them, and redirected it inward? What if you studied yourself with the same intensity you study them? What if you gave your own goals the same attention you give their achievements? What if you became as obsessed with your own growth as you are with their glow? The game changes immediately. The moment you withdraw your energy from their account and deposit it in your own, you stop being broke. You stop being bankrupt. You become wealthy in ways that numbers can't measure. Number 4. The person you're meant to become is suffocating under the weight of who you think you should be. There's a version of you that never got born, not because it couldn't, not because it wasn't ready, but because you buried it alive under the expectations of people whose opinions shouldn't have mattered. You took that raw, unfiltered, magnificent version of yourself and you shaped it, molded it, carved pieces off until it fit into a box labeled acceptable. And now you don't even recognize the thing staring back at you. You've been Frankensteining yourself, taking a piece from their success manual, stitching on a habit from that guru, grafting on a personality trait from that influencer, bolting on a lifestyle from that celebrity. You're not a person anymore. You're a collage of other people's ideas about who you should be. You're a Pinterest board of borrowed dreams. You're a Spotify playlist of someone else's favorite songs, and you've forgotten what music makes your own soul dance. Epictetus said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." But you can't embody what isn't yours. You can't live authentically when you're wearing someone else's skin. You can't breathe freely when you're suffocating under the costume of their approval. Picture yourself as a seed. Not just any seed, your specific seed, with its own unique genetic code, its own blueprint for what it's meant to become. Maybe you're meant to be a wild oak, roots deep, branches wide, weathering storms. But you're looking at the roses and thinking, I should be delicate like that. You're looking at the sunflowers and thinking, I should be tall and bright like that. You're looking at the ivy and thinking, I should be able to climb like that. So you twist yourself, you contort, you try to bloom in ways that violate your own nature, and you wonder why you're dying inside. Here's the violence nobody talks about. Every time you choose their path over your intuition, a piece of your authentic self commits suicide. Every time you silence your own voice to echo theirs, you're performing a murder. Every time you ignore what sets your soul on fire, because it doesn't match their definition of success, you're an accomplice in your own assassination. You know that feeling in your gut, that whisper that says, this isn't me. That's not anxiety. That's not self-doubt. That's your true self, trapped banging on the walls of the prison you built, screaming to be let out. That's the person you were meant to be before the world got its hands on you, before you started people-pleasing your way into oblivion, before you traded your authenticity for their applause. The Stoics talked about living according to nature. Your nature, not some idealized version, not some corrupted copy of someone else. They understood that the fig tree doesn't apologize for not being an apple tree. The lion doesn't feel inadequate because it can't fly like an eagle. Everything in nature expresses its truth without permission, without apology, without comparison, except you. You've been asking permission to exist. You've been apologizing for taking up space. You've been comparing your wings to someone else's roots and declaring yourself deficient. You've been so busy trying to be everything to everyone that you've become nothing to yourself. What would happen if you stopped right now? What if you peeled off every layer that isn't authentically yours? What if you shed every habit you adopted because it looked good on them? What if you released every dream you're chasing because society said it was valuable? What if you burned down the entire architecture of who you think you should be and stood naked in the ashes of your own truth? Terrifying, right? Because underneath all those borrowed identities, underneath all that performance, underneath all that curated perfection, you might discover you don't know who you are anymore. You might find a stranger. You might uncover desires that don't make sense to anyone but you. You might want things that can't be photographed or validated or understood by the masses. Good. That's where your real life begins. In the terrifying, exhilarating space of not knowing who you are, but being willing to find out. In the savage honesty of admitting you've been living a counterfeit existence. In the brutal grace of starting over, this time as yourself. Number 5. The revolution starts when you realize you're not falling behind. You're finding your own rhythm. There's no race. Read that again. There's no race. The competition you've been running, it's a hallucination. The finish line you're desperately chasing, it doesn't exist. The rankings you're obsessed with, they're fiction. You've been sprinting toward a mirage in a desert of your own making, and the only thing you're accomplishing is exhaustion. They graduated before you. So what? They got married first. And they bought a house at 25. Congratulations to them. They launched their business while you're still planning. Good for them. None of it, and I mean none of it, has anything to do with your timeline, your journey, your destination. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire and still wrote, "Confine yourself to the present." Not to their present, not to society's schedule, not to the arbitrary milestones that someone else decided were important. Your present, your pace, your process. Think about jazz music. The beauty isn't in everyone playing the same note at the same time. The magic happens in the syncopation, in the unexpected pauses, in the improvisation, in the unique rhythm each instrument brings. The saxophone doesn't compete with the piano. The drums don't measure themselves against the bass. They're not racing, they're creating, together but separately, unified but individual. Your life is jazz, not a marching band. You're not supposed to be in step with everyone else. You're supposed to find your own groove, your own beat, your own melody, and when you try to play their rhythm, you create dissonance, you create chaos, you create a life that sounds wrong because it's not yours. Here's what happens when you stop comparing timelines, when you stop measuring your chapter 3 against their chapter 30. When you stop treating life like a competitive sport and start treating it like the artistic expression it's meant to be. You discover something profound. You're exactly where you need to be. Not where you want to be. Not where they are. Not where society says you should be. but where you need to be for your specific evolution, your unique growth, your particular transformation. Every delay you've experienced, it was teaching you patience. Every detour you've taken, it was building character. Every failure you've endured, it was redirecting you towards something better aligned with your truth. But you can't see any of that when you're too busy staring at their straight line and cursing your zigzag. Seneca, facing exile and loss, said, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." Your winding path isn't evidence of your inadequacy. It's proof of your complexity. It's proof that your journey requires more depth, more lessons, more preparation than a simple straight shot could provide. The people you're comparing yourself to, they have their own demons, their own struggles, their own 3 a.m. moments of doubt and terror. But you don't see that. You see the edited version. You see the victory without the violence it took to achieve it. You see the crown without the thorns that drew blood to earn it. You're comparing your documentary to their movie trailer, your reality to their marketing, your truth to their performance. And, in that comparison, you're destroying yourself over an illusion. What if instead of trying to catch up, you slowed down? What if instead of racing ahead, you rooted down? What if instead of asking, "Why am I not there yet?" you started asking, "What am I meant to learn here?" What if your so-called delay is actually divine timing? What if your unique pace is exactly the speed at which your soul needs to travel to become who you're meant to be? The revolution, the real one, not the Instagram kind, starts the moment you give yourself permission to be where you are, to honor your own rhythm, to trust your own timeline, to know bone deep that you're not falling behind, because there's nowhere you're supposed to be except here, now, becoming. So, here we are, at the end of this conversation and the beginning of your transformation. You've heard the truth. You've felt it resonate in places you've been ignoring. Now comes the only question that matters. What are you going to do about it? Because knowing changes nothing. Awareness without action is just sophisticated procrastination. You can nod along to every word, feel inspired for the next 20 minutes, and then go right back to the scroll, the comparison, the slow suicide of living everyone's life except your own. Or you can choose differently. Today, now, this moment. You can decide that the person you've been, the one who gave away their power, who worshipped at the altar of others' approval, who ran a race that was never theirs, that person ends here. You can choose to become the architect of your own existence instead of a spectator in everyone else's. The Stoics didn't write philosophy to make you feel good. They wrote it to make you be good, to make you act, to make you live with intention and purpose and fierce authenticity. Marcus Aurelius said, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." That's not morbid. That's liberation. That's the reminder that your time is finite, and every second spent focused on them is a second stolen from yourself. Focus on yourself. Not because you're selfish, but because you're the only project you have complete control over. Focus on yourself because your growth is your responsibility. Focus on yourself because the world doesn't need another copy. It needs your original. Focus on yourself because that's where the real revolution happens. That's where empires are built. That's where authentic joy lives. If this video resonated with you, if you felt something shift, if you're ready to reclaim your power, hit that like button. Drop a comment and tell me one thing you're going to stop comparing and one thing you're going to start building. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to this channel because we're building a community of people who choose themselves, who honor their journey, who refuse to live as background characters in their own lives. Your revolution starts now. Welcome home to yourself.